Good evening, Hougang, and all of Singapore. Thank you for your attendance at today's rally and for your continued belief in a more inclusive Singapore defined by checks and balances. AHPETC has turned a corner. The Workers' Party MPs squarely addressed the issues identified by the AGO in Parliament, taking responsibility for them and having no compulsion about supporting a motion that criticized us. My fellow Singaporeans, it is worthwhile repeating a fact you don't hear very often from the PAP, and that is all town councils in Singapore run operating deficits, if not for grants received from MND. Our latest accounts were audited by an auditor whose appointment was approved by MND. And the latest accounts show that AHPTC, had it received the grants that the government owes it, the town council would have recorded a surplus of $1.6 million. This is in addition to a small accumulated surplus, cancelling out all the deficits from the previous years. It has been quite an achievement, even if there remains more to do. In spite of a 10-month audit by the AGO, which did not expose anything criminal on part of the town council, the PAP have worked overtime to ensure that a Singapore of political checks and balances does not occur or make progress. Mr. Goh Chok Tong himself famously said that the PAP exists in a political system where, I quote, they are their own check. Is this the future we want for Singapore or our children in the next 50 years? Own self, check own self. I think it is important for all Singaporeans to reflect on what actually happens on the ground in Aljunied, Hougang and Punggol. Earlier this year, in April, after the AGO debate in Parliament, the Minister of Social and Family Development made a ministerial visit to Aljunied GRC. This is what he said, and I quote, "There are, of course, usual local issues. Some are municipal issues, which I guess is something the town council needs to settle, but nothing peculiar. I get that in my own ward as well." My fellow Singaporeans, the Workers' Party will be the first to admit that running the town council has not been without its challenges. Some residents have suggested that the HDB should take back the running of town councils because the provision of amenities and services to residents should not be politicized. There is merit to this view, a point that came across during the AIM saga, where 41 out of 50 Singaporeans polled said that looking after town councils should not be politicized and they should instead be returned to the HDB. Do you remember AIM? Like the adverse financial report that the People's Association or PA received from their accountants in 2007, and which the PA gave themselves 6 years to clean up. The PAP does not like to talk a lot about AIM. But let's think about it, because AIM is a beautiful metaphor for the politics that takes place in Singapore. in our town councils. Residents first pay for a computer system, which is then sold to a PAP-owned company. But when the town council changes hands, because residents have voted another party in, the PAP-owned company withdraws the computer system from the town council. The new town council would then have to go out and purchase a new system, effectively causing residents to pay twice for the same service. And the PAP then asks, how come the new opposition town council financial situation has deteriorated? How was the AIM structure ever in the interest of Singapore and Singaporeans? The PAP say they have investigated and debated in Parliament. But is that enough? The AIM episode showed Singaporeans that the town council framework as it exists can be structured to damage our political process and our democracy. The Town Councils Act came into operation in 1988. Those of you who remember will recall the 1980s as a time when the opposition started to grow firmer roots in Singapore, and when the Workers' Party nearly broke through UNO's GRC, narrowly losing with about 49% of the vote. It is my opinion, my friends, that the purpose of designing the town council system was for it to be turned into a political tool that could arrest any wave of support for the opposition. Today, it is being used again in a big way to arrest the support for a more plural and democratic Singapore. Make no mistake about it, the town council structure is not as innocent as it looks. Could it also have been structured with a dual purpose to teach Singaporeans a lesson and to punish them for exercising their democratic right when they vote opposition? Maybe that is why the PAP chairman has not been able to amend the Town Council Act in Parliament 2 years after he announced he will do so, because the current structure is so advantageous to the PAP. Some of you distinctly remember how no managing agent wanted to tender when the Workers' Party took over Aljunied in 2011. Please ask yourself why, because this is a very fundamental question we often overlook when we discuss town council matters. Now, the town council managing agent business in Singapore is a very small one. The biggest player is EM Services, a private company which is ironically 75% owned by the government and specifically HDB. EM Services manages 9 out of 15 town councils in Singapore. The landlord of the town council common properties in Singapore is the HDB. Think about that for a minute. 9 out of 15 town councils are managed by a HDB-owned company. The odds are already stacked against opposition town councils. Should a company 75% owned by the HDB decide not to tender for managing agent contracts in opposition town councils? How has this happened? 50 years of PAP dominance has led to this state of affairs, and we need to reverse it. And we need to prevent the PAP from entrenching a political system that skews politics in any one party's favor, not just the PAP. The only reason the PAP have been able to create such a political system is because of their parliamentary supermajority. My fellow Singaporeans, we simply have to cut it down. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the matter of why it is so important to empower our future in the context of a one-party dominant political system, because that is what is so fundamental to many Singaporeans. Even though 40% of Singaporeans have made their desire known for a more balanced political system in the last elections, the PAP continues to retain more than 90% of the seats, or close to 90% of the seats. My fellow Singaporeans, the town council structure, like the town council structure, the current political system is structurally flawed, and it will not bring us the inclusive Singapore that we Singaporeans genuinely want. An inclusive Singapore will only take form when the values enshrined in our beautiful flag, especially those of justice, equality, and democracy, are genuinely institutionalized in our political system. You made a momentous breakthrough in 2011. Let it not be a false dawn. While we saw the government finally responding to the people's voice, there are many more miles to go. There is a lot more to do to improve our national institutions and structures, as we have outlined in our manifesto. To all voters and fellow Singaporeans, we cannot afford to slide back to a one-party dominant state and parliament. Empower your future. Vote for the Workers' Party. Thank you.